I want to talk about my top 10 defenses going into the upcoming NFL season. Now, we already did my top 10 offenses going into this year. Make sure that you guys go ahead and check that out. And when it comes to my top 10 defenses, I want to give you guys my criteria. I'm going off not just talent, but good coaching as well. So if you don't have a good coach, I'm not going to have your defense on here. And if you're a talented team that also has good coaching as well, you're going to be a little bit higher on this list. And the first team I'm going to start off with are the New England Patriots. Now, on paper, the New England Patriots defense probably doesn't really excite anybody, but they have a really good defensive line that's fantastic when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. Matthew Judon, ever since the Patriots signed him, he's been a stud. He had 15.5 sacks last year. You also have Josh Uche, who had 11.5 sacks. They got a really good core of safeties. They're really talented, really deep at that position. Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar is starting to emerge as one of the better safeties in the league. And then you got Adrian Phillips. And then you drafted cornerback Christian Gonzalez in the first round of this past year's NFL draft. Hopefully, Jack Jones is able to come to a agreement or find a way out of his legal issues that allows him to play this year. But even if he's not ready to go, you still do have Marcus Jones, who I think had a pretty solid year last season. So for the New England Patriots, defensively, they need this defense to be as good as advertised. If this is a top 10 defense and they have at least a solid offense this year, they definitely have a chance to compete for the 7th spot in the AFC this year. And for Bill Belichick, a lot of people are starting to say that this is a make or break season for him. If the Patriots don't make it to the playoffs, there's a little bit of a possibility that Bill Belichick may not return in 2024. So if the Patriots are going to have a chance at making it to the postseason, they need this defense to play at a high level, and I believe that it will. Although Bill Belichick isn't really all that great as of late when it comes to managing the offensive side of the football, he's still one of the better defensive-minded coaches that we have in the NFL. The Houston Texans come in at number 9. A lot of people probably are going to be a little bit surprised with this selection. Some people probably in the comment section type in their hate comments saying, JT, I hope you didn't quit your day job. And when you look at the Houston Texans defense, I think a large reason why they're going to have a top 10 defense this year is because of the DeMeco Ryans effect. When he was the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, they had one of the best defenses in the league. And he's going to a Houston Texans team that has some of the best young talent on that side of the football. How many of you guys, non-Texans fans, know about how good Jalen Petrie was last season? This guy led the Houston Texans in tackles and interceptions as a safety. He was arguably the best rookie safety in the NFL last year. And when you also look at the fact that you have Derek Stingley, whose rookie season wasn't that good due to the fact that Lovie Smith's scheme just wasn't a good fit for his talents, DeMeco Ryans is going to be able to elevate Derek Stingley. And we should see Derek Stingley have a breakout season this year. They also drafted Will Anderson, who they traded back up to select after they took CJ Stroud. I think he's going to have a really good first season. And then you brought in some key veterans in free agency, such as former 49ers safety Jimmy Ward, who follows DeMeco to Houston. You also signed linebacker Denzel Perryman, who was a former Pro Bowler with the Las Vegas Raiders. So this is a defense that isn't just full of youth. They also have some veteran experience on that side of the football. And I think with DeMeco Ryans being at the helm at the head coach position for the Texans, this is going to be a really good defense. And this is going to be an elite defense fairly fast year one under DeMeco Ryans. Look how good the New York Jets defense was their first season when Robert Saleh became their head coach. They instantly had a fantastic defense. And with the young talent that DeMeco Ryans is going to be inheriting, I think that this Texans defense should be one of the better defenses that they've put on the field in a very long time. The Washington Commanders come in at number 8. I think they have the most underrated defense in the NFL going into this year. Ever since Ron Rivera took over as the head coach for the Commanders, they've had one of the better defenses in the NFL under him every single year. They have one of the most underrated defensive lines in the NFL. When you talk about some of the best D lines in the league, you normally think about the Eagles and the 49ers, but the Washington Commanders are also in that conversation. You got Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, the Brothers of Destruction, and Juan Gotti's voice. And then you got a really good secondary. Cameron Curl was a top 5 safety according to Pro Football Focus. I also am really high on safety Derek Forrest. And at cornerback, you got Kendall Fuller, who's coming off one of the best seasons of his career, and you drafted Emmanuel Forbes in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft. And yeah, he came in at 166 pounds. He has gained a good amount of weight ever since then. He's pretty much around 180, so I'm not really concerned about his weight. And he's been looking pretty impressive for Washington so far throughout OTAs and minicamp. And for Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, this defense, I don't think is going to be an issue. This was the sole reason why they went 8-1 last year, because their defense was able to keep them in games. And if this offense can at least be solid, the Commanders should be, without a doubt, a playoff team. And the NFC that doesn't really have too many proven contenders outside of the 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. And then after that, it's pretty much everybody else. So I have the Washington Commanders at number 8. At number 7, I'm going with, let me see who I'm going with for number 7. I'm going with the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 7 and 6. Now, the New York Jets, everybody keeps talking about Aaron Rodgers and the offense, and is Aaron Rodgers going to be good enough to get the New York Jets to the playoffs? And not too many people are talking about how good the New York Jets defense was last year. The New York Jets had a top 3 defense last year. And when they played against some of the best offenses in the NFL, they was able to slow them down. And if the New York Jets are going to make it to the playoffs, they're going to need this defense to continue to play as good as what they did in 2022. I'm sick and tired of people making it seem like Aaron Rodgers is the only thing that the New York Jets have, and the defense isn't getting enough recognition. They got Sauce Gardner, who is arguably the best cornerback in the league in a lot of people's opinion. Like, Sauce Gardner is already being compared to some of the best cornerbacks of this past generation. I saw a post on Instagram, you know those start one, trade one, and bench one posts, right? So I saw Sauce Gardner in one of those posts with Richard Sherman and Champ Bailey. And I'm just like, bro, what the hell? This dude has only played 1 season in the NFL, and people are already crowning him as one of the best cornerbacks ever, man. Like, give me a break. I love me some Sauce Gardner, but can we just hamper back a little bit on the expectations? Like, we're already trying to crown this guy a Hall of Famer, and he's only played 1 year. Like, can we give him a couple of more years to cement himself as one of the best cornerbacks in the league before we start trying to title him one of the greatest cornerbacks of the past decade? Like, some of the people that keep making these posts, gassing up Sauce Gardner, need to calm down a little bit. Like, I'm not trying to deny the man's skill, but trying to put him up there with Richard Sherman and Champ Bailey, some of y'all just getting a little bit too wild with the Sauce Gardner hype. And once again, I love me some Sauce Gardner, but some of y'all are just going a little bit too overboard with the Sauce Gardner love, man. It's getting a little ridiculous. And then at number 6, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as a Steelers fan, this is the most excited that I've been about the defense in a very long time. Now, I'm going to just throw it out there. I wasn't a big fan of signing old man Patrick Peterson. You got to remember, Patrick Peterson, yeah, he had a lot of interceptions from Minnesota last year, but this was the same guy who was getting cooked by Isaiah Hodgins. Not once, but twice. And most of you guys, just be honest, bro, you didn't know who the hell Isaiah Hodgins was. And the only reason I knew of him was covering the draft when he was coming out of Oregon State. He was on the practice squad to start last year, and then all of a sudden, I see the New York Giants playing the Minnesota Vikings, and Isaiah Hodgins is absolutely terrorizing Patrick Peterson. So there's a lot of Steeler fans who are having some pretty high expectations for Patrick Peterson, But I'm not really expecting a whole lot out of Patrick Peterson. I think he can be productive even though he's getting up there in age, but I don't think he's going to have the kind of impact that many Steelers fans are expecting him to have. I think he's going to be serviceable, but I don't think he's going to be a massive upgrade at the position. Now, I do think that Joey Porter is going to be a fantastic addition to this defense. This is somebody who the Steelers got in the second round when most NFL analysts and scouts or NFL scouts have first round grades on Joey Porter Jr. He is a fantastic fit for this defense. He's a fantastic press, man-to-man cover corner. He was pretty much the best cornerback in the Big Ten. Most people either had him or Sauce Gardner. Well, not him and Sauce Gardner, but him and Devon Witherspoon as their cornerback one going into the draft. Some people had Christian Gonzalez, but Joey Porter Jr. was a fantastic draft pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's one of my favorite Steelers that we have on this team. Then at linebacker, you sign Elandon Roberts, and you get Cole Holcomb, who I was talking to my guy, Warren Gotti, who talks about the Washington Commanders. Make sure that you guys take him out. He says he was a little bit disappointed that the Commanders weren't able to bring him back. When he's able to stay healthy, he's a really fantastic linebacker, and this is the best linebacker unit that Pittsburgh probably has had in a couple of years. Remember that the Achilles heel of this defense has been due to the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't really been able to find answers at the linebacker position. Last year, you brought in Miles Jack. You thought that he was going to be able to solidify your linebacker position, and he wasn't really all that great. So now you restart over at that position by signing Cole Holcomb and Elandon Roberts. And the Steelers have a really good pass rush. Like, we know how good TJ Watt was, but you want to know who was the dude who was stepping up when TJ Watt had to miss a couple of games due to injury? It was Alex Highsmith. He had over double-digit sacks. And not just that, but I think that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are a top 3 pass rushing duo going into this season. Now, that may be a bold statement, but I think that that's going to prove to be true when you look at the kind of production that Alex Highsmith had last year. And then look at the interior of Pittsburgh's defensive line. You got Cam Hayward, who seems to get better with age. You got Larry Ogunjobi, who is being a really underrated and slept on part of this Steelers defensive line. We know how good Cam Hayward is, but Larry Ogunjobi, I don't think he gets enough recognition for how well he's played for Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, I really love this defense going into this year. I have them at number 6. Now at number 5, I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, they did lose Steve Wilks, and they also did lose Jimmy Ward, but they have Steve Wilks. Well, they did lose DeMeco Ryans. They have Steve Wilks, who's going to be replacing DeMeco Ryans. And Steve Wilks is one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. So the 49ers have hit on their last couple of DCs. They had Robert Saleh and they had DeMeco Ryans. And now you also have Steve Wilks to the fold. And Steve Wilks, when he was the interim head coach for Carolina last year, he nearly got them boys to the playoffs. And that defense was playing fantastic under his tutelage. So for the 49ers to get Steve Wilks, I think was a really good replacement for DeMeco Ryans. And they have one of the best D-lines in the league. You already had Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, and now these fools add Javon Hargrave. The rich just get richer, it seems like, man. So you look at how good Javon Hargrave is. He was fantastic for the Philadelphia Eagles. Some people say that he was the best defensive lineman and one of the best players that Philadelphia had on that defense, with one of the greatest pass rushes in NFL history. So you add him to an already scary defensive line that was already really good at getting pressure on the quarterback. The 49ers defense is going to be even tougher to stop up front. Now in the secondary, they did lose Emmanuel Mosley, who signed with the Detroit Lions. Now they do have the Amador Lenore, who I'm not really that high on. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he was great. He had an up and down season last year. He definitely could end up maturing and improving this year, and he could perform better, but I think the jury is still out on him. Charvarius Ward played really well for San Francisco. He was a fantastic free agency signing. And then you still have the best linebacking core in the NFL with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So the 49ers defense, despite the fact that they lost D'Amico Ryans, some people may think that a drop-off is probably doomed to happen for the fact that they lost another good defensive coordinator to a head coaching job. But I think that under Steve Wilks, this is somebody who's still trying to get another opportunity as a head coach. He did a fantastic job as the DC down there in Carolina and the interim head coach. So I expect that to continue with the legacy of Kyle Shanahan, and the 49ers continue to make great staff hires when it comes to their defensive coordinator position. And overall, this should be a very good defense this year. I have them starting off my top 5. Number 4, I got the Baltimore Ravens. Mike McDonald and this defense, I don't think they were that great early last year, but during the second half of the season, they really stepped up, especially when Lamar Jackson had to miss a couple of games or pretty much miss the remainder of the season due to injury. And this defense pretty much carried this team on his back. And you look at their defensive line, yeah, you have some concerns where the pass rush is going to come from. You let Justin Houston walk away. You also let Calais Campbell go as well. Both of those guys were up there in age. But I do think that they have some young pass rushers who are going to step up this year. Odafe Oweh, I think, can be really good. You do have David Ojabo, who a lot of people probably forgot about, but in last year's draft, most people expected him to be a top 15 pick, but he ended up falling out of the first round due to the fact that he had an injury that he suffered. And last year was pretty much a redshirt year for him. I think this year he could really hit the ground running. And I don't think he's going to tee off right out the gate. I think this is going to be somebody who you're probably going to start hearing more during the second half of this season, because he's still going to have to adjust to the NFL game. Last year was a redshirt year, so this year is pretty much his rookie season, even though this is his second year in the league. So I'm really high on David Ojabo. And then you look at how well Kyle Hamilton played. There was one of my homies who was telling me that he thought Kyle Hamilton was going to be a bust because he saw Kyle Hamilton slow 40 time. But if you watch Kyle Hamilton when he was coming out of Notre Dame, like, this dude was an absolute stud. And playing alongside of Marcus Williams, I think that really helped out Kyle Hamilton a lot. And he did have some mistakes early in games. Like, he was giving up a good amount of touchdowns the first couple of games in the season last year. But as he got more experience and as the season lingered on, Kyle Hamilton continued to get better week after week. And he quietly had one of the better seasons that we've seen out of any of the rookie safeties. Like, we all know about Jaquan Brisker with the Chicago Bears, and most people should know about Jalen Petrie, at least if you consider yourself a diehard football fan. But Kyle Hamilton, he was just as good as those guys. It's just that he got out to a slower start. And then you look at the fact that Marlon Humphrey has all of a sudden became the most underrated cornerback in the NFL. Didn't this man only give up 1 touchdown last season? And there's a lot of top 10 cornerback lists that I've been seeing on social media floating around that don't have Marlon Humphrey in them. How can you leave out Marlon Humphrey, somebody who only gave up 1 touchdown last season? Like, that makes no sense to me. This is going to be a fantastic defense that the Ravens have going into this year. Like, look who they have at linebacker. Patrick Queen has improved every single year. And then you traded middle of the season for Roquan Smith, one of the best linebackers in the game. The Baltimore Ravens, not only are they going to have one of the best offenses in the league, but they also are going to have one of the best defenses in the league. And that's why I have them coming in at number 4. Number 3, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles lost 2 really good linebackers and TJ Edwards and Kazir White to free agency, but they're going to have a really good replacement in Nakobe Dean, who the Philadelphia Eagles were able to steal in the 2022 NFL draft. Nakobe Dean was expected to be a first-round pick. Nobody had him falling the way that he did. And for Philadelphia, they struck gold with him, and I think that he's going to have a very incredible season for Philadelphia this year. I think he's going to end up being a Pro Bowler. He potentially could be in the conversation of becoming an All-Pro. That's how high I was on Nakobe Dean when he was coming out of Georgia. And then you look at how good this defensive line still is. Like, yeah, they have a lot of guys such as Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox who've been around the block, but they got the demon from Apaka and Jalen Carter. A lot of y'all think I'm a huge fan of Bryce Young and Tank Dell, but neither one of those guys were my favorite players in this past year's draft. I was a huge supporter of Jalen Carter, and I hate how the media villainized Jalen Carter for all the off-the-field incidents he had. Like, for Philadelphia, Jalen Carter is going to hit the ground running. Like, this dude probably should have around 8-9 sacks as a rookie. And that's high praise considering the fact that he is an interior defensive lineman. I think that's how good Jalen Carter is. Like, if you're an Eagles fan and you don't watch a lot of college football, go back and watch Georgia versus LSU in the SEC championship game. This dude was a one-man wrecking ball against LSU's offensive line. He literally sacked their quarterback with one damn arm. This dude is a freak of nature. And then you pair him up with another freak of nature from Georgia. I guess we got to call them the Philadelphia Bulldogs because they just have a love for these Georgia Bulldogs players, man. You got freaking Jordan Davis, who, before he went down, he was really good against the run this year. And with more opportunities this year and playing alongside of the vets that he has in front of him and Jalen Carter, I think Jordan Davis is going to improve as well. Now, hopefully he can give you more when it comes to pass rush. But when Jordan Davis was in games, he was really effective against the run. And when he went down and missed some time with injuries last year, the Philadelphia Eagles run defense started to go down a little bit in production. And a lot of people on social media were talking about it. And it kind of started to happen when Jordan Davis had that injury. And then in the secondary, you bring back Darius Slay, James Bradbury. You got Reed Blankenship. You signed Terrell Edmonds. Now, if you're an Eagles fan and you don't know how good Terrell Edmonds is and what to expect from him, you're asking the right guy to give you a little bit of the synopsis on Terrell Edmonds, because I've watched him his whole entire career because I'm a Steelers fan and I wasn't happy when we drafted him in the first round. I still aren't happy that we drafted him in the first round because he's not on the team anymore, but he wasn't bad. As a matter of fact, like, Terrell Edmonds got better every year with Pittsburgh. It's just that he never played up to the level of what you expect when you draft the safety in the first round. Now, he's really good in run support. He's somebody who you can play up close to the line of scrimmage. He's going to be really good against the run. He's going to fill the run pretty well. He doesn't miss too many tackles, in my opinion. I think he's a pretty solid tackler, but he's not all that great in coverage at times. Now, he's not dookie in coverage, but I kind of feel like for Terrell Edmonds, him being in Philadelphia is kind of a prove-it spot for him. But when you look at how well Reed Blankenship played last year, I don't think anybody expected Reed Blankenship to play as well as what he did. And then you got Sidney Brown, who I feel like was one of the more underrated prospects coming out of this past year's draft on the defense side of football. Like, the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't think this defense is going to drop off at all. And a lot of players, you know, they weren't really huge fans of Jonathan Gannon. Like, they give him props, but they make it seem like they could have done better. And you bring in Sean Desai, who spent last year at with the Seattle Seahawks. So Sean Desai, I think there's a pretty high chance that he could end up being a better DC than Jonathan Gannon, but we have to wait and see on that. So the Philadelphia Eagles, I think, going to have the third best defense in the NFL this year. At number 2, I got the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins on paper have arguably the most talented defense in the NFL. And I was close to putting them at number 1, but the other team I had at number 1, I just couldn't not include them at number 1, so I had to put them over the Miami Dolphins. But the Miami Dolphins, the hiring of Vic Fangio was one of the biggest offseason acquisitions, not just when it comes to players, but coaches in general. Vic Fangio, he's pretty much the most influential defensive coordinator in the NFL right now. I mean, you look at the fact that many defensive coordinators are starting to implement Vic Fangio's defense, and also the fact that Vic Fangio's defense has kind of influenced a lot of defensive coordinators that try to add their own wrinkle and spin to it. And you traded for Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey Some people are trying to say that he's washed up. He is not washed up. Jalen Ramsey is still a top 3 cornerback in the league, and that's at worst. And if you want to go a little bit farther, okay, top 5, but don't make it seem like Jalen Ramsey still isn't an elite cornerback. Like, why are people trying to call Jalen Ramsey washed? Like, he still had a very good season for the LA Rams last year. And then you pair him alongside of Xavier Howard, who had a down year last season. And I don't want to hear no excuses about injuries or whatever, bro. Like, if you are playing, you should be good enough to produce at a high level. Xavier Howard, that may have been the worst season of his NFL career that I watched last year, man. This dude was looking like burnt toast at times, man. Burnt toast. And nobody likes burnt toast. So with the addition of Vic Fangio, he should be able to get Xavier Howard playing back to his former self and not the version of Xavier Howard that we saw last year. And then you got Bradley Chubb, who played his best football when Vic Fangio was his head coach up there in Denver. And Vic Fangio, he's going to be able to get the most out of Bradley Chubb. And you pair him alongside of Jalen Phillips, and you got Christian Wilkins on that defensive line. The Miami Dolphins, this is a super stacked defense, talented at pretty much every single position. I love me some Javon Holland, can't forget about him. I think they're going to have the second best defense in the NFL this year. And at number 1, can we get a drum roll? I got the Dallas Cowboys, man. The Dallas Cowboys, they have the best defensive coordinator in the NFL this year, and Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, he probably is going to end up becoming a head coach next season. He could have became a head coach this past offseason, but there was a couple of jobs that he decided to turn down. I mean, they are deep on their defensive line. I love the addition of Mozzie Smith. And then you look at the fact that you're going to have one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL with Trayvon Diggs and also Stephon Gilmore, who Stephon Gilmore was still fantastic when he was playing for the Indianapolis Colts last year. And then you are incredibly deep at the safety position. You got Donovan Wilson, Jerron Kearse, Malik Hooker, and then that linebacker. You're deep at linebacker. You got Leighton Vander Esch, who is really good when he's able to stay on the field. You got Michael Parsons, one of the 5 best defensive players in football right now. The Dallas Cowboys, I think going into the 2023 season, have the best defense in the NFL, and they got the best defensive coordinator in the league. And Dan Quinn is the sole reason why I still believe that the Dallas Cowboys have a fantastic opportunity to make it out of the conference this year. If you need a reason to have faith in Dallas, you should at least have faith in Dan Quinn. This defense is going to be really good. So I have the Dallas Cowboys at number 1. These are my top 10 defenses going into the league. Let me know how you guys feel about it down in the comment section down below.